Okay, what happens when one of the UK's largest construction companies collapses, leaving over 2,200 people without jobs and over £1 billion in public sector contracts in limbo? Okay, ISG, an absolute giant in the construction industry, recently went into administration, and the ripple effects are being felt across the entire sector. Now, what went wrong? How can businesses learn from the disaster to avoid a similar fate? Now, today's video, we're going to break down ISG's collapse. We're going to uncover the lessons every contractor and subcontractor needs to know, and we're going to look at the future of the construction industry in the UK. Welcome back to the Director First YouTube channel. My name is Chris Worden. What we do here is we make UK insolvency easy to understand. And today we're tackling a topic that's been making headlines across the construction sector, and it's the collapse of ISG Construction. Now, on the 20th of September 2024, ISG, one of the biggest UK construction companies there were, filed for administration. It's left thousands unemployed, put hundreds of projects at risk, and a supply chain that has been knocked for millions and millions of pounds. So how on earth did ISG, a company with a turnover of 2.2 billion, fail? More importantly, what lessons can we take from their collapse? And how can we help prevent it from happening again in the future? Come on, let's dive in. Right, ISG, what actually happened? ISG's collapse didn't happen overnight. The writing, though, was on the wall for months before the formal announcement of their administration. Here is a quick breakdown of the timeline. Right, September, this video is going out in October, September 2024, ISG formally entered administration and they appointed Ernst & Young, okay? Over £1 billion in contracts, including numerous public sector projects, were left in limbo. 2,200 employees were made redundant and only 200 staying on to assist with the administration process. So what's caused the collapse? Let's explore the key factors that led to the downfall of ISG. Right, there are several main reasons why ISG ended up in administration, but the core issues revolve around cash flow problems, loss-making contracts, and a flawed business model. Let's break it down. Right, let's talk about loss-making contracts. ISG were involved in several of these contracts that didn't make any money. In fact, they lost money from 2018 to 2020. Obviously, if you're doing a job that's costing you money, it's going to cause you financial strain. ISG have never fully recovered. They were responsible for some massive projects, you know, like London Velodrome, Google's new headquarters in King's Cross. Some of these contracts were burdened, though, with unforeseen costs, which led to the contracts being loss-making. You don't have to be Donald Trump to work out that if your business is taking contracts that you're going to lose money on, somewhere down the line, there's going to be a problem. There were also some failed rescue attempts. I mean, over the months leading up to the collapse, ISG made attempts to secure a new buyer or additional funding to keep the business afloat, but ultimately they were unsuccessful. This left the company unable to continue operations. Another key factor here is like extremely low operating margins. Like one of the most significant factors behind ISG's downfall was its unsustainable operating profit of just 2%. 2% profit margin. Can you be given to... Would you do a job for a 2% profit margin? Now, in the 2020 financial report, ISG had a turnover of 2.18 billion, but reported a pre-tax profit of just 11.5 million. This is razor thin. You combine that with high executive pay and the business was always going to be vulnerable to cash flow disruptions. Obviously, like nearly every construction company I've spoken to the last few years, there's some legacy financial issues from the pandemic. You know, like many companies, ISG was hit hard when the pandemic happened. And this is common for most construction companies. There's been delays on projects, costs have gone through the roof, and there's a slowdown in the construction sector. You know, and I don't care whether you're an ISG or a little builder in the north of England. People are putting off pulling the trigger on these projects. Some are getting delayed altogether. And all these issues just exacerbated their existing financial troubles. Now, one of the things that I've seen here since this happened a few Fridays ago is the impact across the construction industry. Because this collapse of ISG has got far-reaching consequences. It's not just the company that is affected, but they used a lot of contractors and subcontractors and suppliers, and they were working on projects with ISG. Now, many of these companies face non-payment, contractual disputes, and hundreds of projects across the UK have been paused. Now, I got a call on the afternoon of the administration, and it's a guy I did a job for a few years ago, and he has a steel business, and he says, "Chris, am I going to get paid?" He's owed a couple of £100,000. And I said, "Listen, the likelihood is you're not going to get anything. And if you do get anything, it'll be small and it'll be a lot further down the line." Now, he's just one company that, as a result of ISG going pop, are probably going to look at insolvency themselves. A lot of people have sort of suggested that it mirrors the collapse of Carillion back in 2018, another high-profile failure. Unfortunately, though, it seems that the lessons from the Carillion debacle weren't fully absorbed. We're seeing some similar patterns with this ISG job. So I like to try and put out some lessons that everybody can learn from these big failures. Now, ISG's downfall, it is tragic. It offers critical lessons for the construction industry to avoid future collapses, but it's also give lessons to any business. And the first takeaway I want to talk about is ensure sufficient profit margins. You know, lots of these big construction firms that are operating on unsustainable margins. ISG was 2%. I mean, how on earth can you operate on a 2% margin? It is far too narrow to account for unexpected costs and delays, which is common occurrence in construction. You know, contractors and subcontractors, I mean, they've got to be aiming for a minimum margin of 5%, but come on, it's got to be higher than that. You know, if you're a small, you know, you've got a team of a few lads, you're not going to work for 5%. You know, the higher the profit margin that you can get while maintaining being competitive, it's going to help you to maintain a buffer against unforeseen financial challenges. Now, an interesting quote that was summed up this issue perfectly was a former ISG managing quantity surveyor, so basically one of the numbers guys. He said 2% is not sustainable, 1% contingency is not sustainable, and 0 weeks program time risk allowance is not sustainable. If firms don't prioritise sustainable margins, they risk failing into the same trap as ISG. I got told the other week that there's a firm who goes to work on these bigger contracts at minus 5%. And he goes to work on a minus 5%, hoping and praying that he'll make some money on the variations. That is a very, very, very tight business model. Another lesson I think we can all learn from is diversify your client base. You know, ISG relied heavily on public sector contracts like schools, prisons, government buildings. Listen, really good contracts if you can get them. And while they can be stable, Over-reliance on any one customer creates risk. Really, we should be diversifying our portfolios, mix of public and private sector working to spread the risk. I'll tell you what I've gone through here in this business. So, I mean, let's take a look at the administration of ISG. This will be millions and millions of pounds in fees will go to Ernest Young, right? Millions and millions. And I had it at my old company, bit of a dispute with my partner because he just wanted to do really big jobs, like literally 20, 30 grand fee jobs. Don't get me wrong, I prefer those jobs, okay? But if I'd have just focused on these big jobs, right, I missed the little 4 or 5 grand liquidations. And they're our bread and butter, you know, literally. If I just focused on the little jobs, I'd miss the big jobs. So I try and combine a mix of everything. Now, obviously, if you call us and it's a little job, the chances are you won't speak to me, you'll speak to one of my team because I'm working on the bigger jobs. But as a business, we've got to diversify what's coming in. You know, some businesses just do CVAs. Some businesses just look for the big administrations. You know, we're small enough and agile enough to diversify what we've got coming in to make sure we're always making money. Another lesson out of this is you've got to maintain robust cash flow. You know, cash flow is the lifeblood of any business, not just in a construction firm. But ISG's failure to manage cash flow effectively was a key reason for the collapse. Now, how do we avoid this? We've got to implement strong financial controls in every business. You know, regular audits. Do you have sort of separate savings? When you're doing multiple jobs, do you know what money you're making on that job? You know, are you putting your VAT away? Are you putting some money away for corporation tax? So you're left with a pot of money in your business that the business can operate with. One way to avoid catastrophic financial loss is to have these things in construction called electronic payment platforms, project bank accounts. You know, this is more for, you know, construction, but these type of things help keep things safe in the event of things going off the rails a bit. You know, are you reviewing your contract terms, you know, to ensure that risks are shared fairly between everyone who's getting involved? You know, do you need to reevaluate your contracting models? You know, the thing in contracting I hear a lot is the race to the bottom. And we get it in insolvency, by the way. You've heard it. Someone will do a liquidation for £1,000. They won't. They'll tell you it's £1,000, then they're going to shaft you when you appoint them. But in construction, there's a race to the bottom. And this is where contractors are bidding at the lowest price to win a contract. I've had it before. I'm that desperate to do a job, I'm doing it too cheaply. And then I do the job and there's no money in it and it's taking all our resources. You've got to maintain. You can't price yourself too high, okay? But doing a job at all costs is going to hit you at some stage in the future. Now, that race to the bottom, it basically encourages people to take on projects with high risk and low rewards. And this was highlighted in the collapse of ISG. So, moving forward, we believe that the construction industry as a whole needs to embrace fairer, more collaborative contract models that allow for better risk distribution and sustainable margins. People cannot go to work and not make a profit. How simple does that sound? You know, so if you're pricing work out there, obviously don't take them in, but you've got to ensure there's enough profit for you to do this job. I mean, let's sort of revert back to, you know, Carillion, because ISG, it echoes this big failure that happened in 2018. And like ISG, Carillion operated on dangerously low margins and they took on too many loss-making contracts. What was the result? Thousands of job losses, abandoned projects, and a knock-on effect throughout the construction supply chain. It absolutely battered the people that were working for Carillion, the suppliers, the subcontractors. There was a raft of insolvencies at the end of this. And in both cases, the collapse of these industry giants highlights the fragility of the UK construction sector. Now, surely the industry as a whole now must seriously reevaluate its financial practices. Okay, hopefully we're going to avoid further collapses in the future. How are you, on the back of this, right? If you're a construction business, what can you do to protect your construction business? You might be a contractor, a subcontractor, a supplier, but a collapse of ISG size, it serves as a wake-up call. And here are some practical steps I think you can take to protect your business. Listen, number one, review your margins. Are your profit margins realistic? Do not bid on jobs that offer razor-thin margins. Ensure that your prices reflect the true cost of the project, with enough to buffer to account for unexpected delays and expenses. Number two, please manage cash flow effectively. Not every penny in your business account is your business's. You've got to keep an eye on who's owed what, when are they owed, cash flow projections, what's coming in, what's going out, separate money for tax. Check your contracts. As daft as that sounds, make sure you're not taking on any unnecessary risk in your contracts. Review things like payment schedules and clauses relating to insolvency, okay? And do not be scared of renegotiating terms if you need it. If you're a good contractor, your customers should be willing to go back to the drawing board to keep everybody happy and safe. We've talked about before, diversify your projects. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. A balanced mix of public work, private sector work can help protect your business from the collapse of a single sector of a client. So let's wrap up. The collapse of ISG is a stark reminder that the construction industry in the UK is still vulnerable to major financial failures. But hopefully we can learn from the mistakes. Hopefully contractors can take steps to protect themselves and avoid the same fate. Now, thank you for watching us at Director First. If you found the video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for your time. Chris Worden, God bless.